Thank you for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz. So, is Attorney General William Barr a liar, as I've heard some liberals say over the weekend, and apparently Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said this publicly? It depends on the two definitions of lies. The conventional definition of lies, I would say that he's not a liar at all. But by the socialist definition of lying, or if you will, in the American context, the fascist lies, then of course he's a liar, because anyone who in any way interrupts the authoritarian goose-stepping agenda of the left is a liar. And anyone who supports it is truthful, whether it be the biggest liars ever. I mean, the Clintons are among the biggest liars in public life that we've seen in a generation, and yet it's not discussed. It's not that they lie, because they're on the right side of the political spectrum. So it has nothing to do with any objective attempt to get at truths. It has to do with socialist or fascist truths versus socialist or fascist untruths. And of course, at the core of the entire leftist experiment is a rejection of truth. Everything is subjective. Everything is what you want it to be. It doesn't matter, what doesn't, your reality is real. And if somebody tells you otherwise, then they're prejudiced. Then they're bigots. They're imposing on you. It doesn't matter if you're a mass murderer. If you say it's true, then it's true because you create reality. The leftist doesn't believe in objective reality and an objective moral and ethical code, so they're allowed to create realities, which is why leftists require an earthly messiah, whether that messiah be a president or the Democratic candidate. I don't know, Beto O'Rourke could be the new messiah. They need to have this constant human beings standing in as a position, the messianic position, because since they don't believe in anything, and since that's not possible to get through the day, let alone to exist, since you don't believe in truths, they look to some sort of enlightened theoretician to define truths. And they choose that theoretician, first of all, because they're willing to take the role, and secondly, because they comport to the authoritarian vision that the left holds. And what that vision, of course, is a fuzzy thing. It's, when you get down to it, I've referred to it as the one world international ant colony where everyone's equal. I don't think they know that or necessarily take that on consciously. But when you strip it all down, that's what they believe in. And people who are willing to parrot this lie, in the real sense, that Attorney General Barr is lying, are people who adhere at the very core to that particular philosophy, I would contend. Now, what about Attorney General Barr? Well, Attorney General Barr is stepping into the breach, and he's not only doing the right thing with regard to releasing the Mueller report without the revealing information that could be illegal to reveal, but apparently he is on the verge, and I think this is going to be coming down this month, maybe next month, in conjunction with the release of the Special Solicitor General report, the Horowitz report, detailing malfeasance at the FBI and the Department of Justice, that he is apparently preparing at both the once the solicitor's report is in, and also at the behest of several Republican congressmen, including Devin Nunes, he is preparing, from what I've heard, and again, I don't know this, but I believe that he is preparing indictments against James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, and possibly others. I mean, I think there's Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice, and that all of these people are involved in real malfeasance that is now becoming more evident due to the release of the Mueller report and the fact that the Mueller report did not recommend indictments. So therefore, we have to ask, since there were no indictments, and since the Mueller report was not friendly to the president. I mean, to put it mildly, it was surrounded by people who were absolutely out for his neck, for his throat. And since they had 2 years and they had all the money they needed, and they had the ability to investigate and indict, and yet they still recommended no indictments, who then cooked up this whole scheme? How did this happen? How did it happen that this phony dossier was used to get permission to spy on the Trump administration through Carter Page? How was it that General Flynn was set up to, to inadvertently contradict himself? How is it that this Papadopoulos was set up with a mole, with a spy who got him to say things? Who was behind all this? Who was behind using that phony dossier paid for by the Clinton campaign to get permission to spy on a candidate for office, to bug a candidate in a bugging operation that makes the Watergate thing look like kindergarten? That's where there's going to be, I believe, indictments against the aforementioned. And boy, is there going to be a firestorm when that happens. You know, we talk about the accusations of lies and the screaming about impeachment. Then we're going to have, a complete meltdown. Let me just conclude by saying that we have to continue to reiterate the simple fact, and we have to answer every accusation thrown, that the Mueller report did not recommend indictments, period. Doesn't matter what Mueller decided to take a cheap shot with notes. I'd like to recommend indictments. Maybe I'll let Congress. He didn't do it. They didn't recommend indictments, and they wanted to. So since they didn't, you have to assume that there was no collusion and no obstruction of justice. Now, I've heard some pundits say that you cannot charge a sitting president with obstruction of justice. That's bullcrap. Bill Clinton was impeached on a charge of obstruction of justice because it was recommended by special counsel Kenneth Starr. Kenneth Starr recommended 4 counts for indictment: obstruction of justice, perjury, suborning perjury, and witness tampering. And of those 4 charges, 2 of them were used to impeach Clinton. Those 2 were obstruction of justice and perjury. And in addition, the perjury charge led him to lose his law license and have to pay a fine, which I believe was paid for by corrupt businessman Mark Rich after receiving a pardon and after giving up who knows how much money to the Clinton library. So, never mind, we could talk about the lies and the corruption of the Clintons. That's a whole different story. The point is that we should keep in mind in arguing whether or not Attorney General Barr is lying, or whether or not, or any of these other issues, that there were no indictments, period. And if someone wants to say, but what about obstruction of justice? The answer is, well, then why didn't Mueller indict? Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Charles Moscowitz. Check out my books, available at Amazon. And, of course, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot.